JuJu is the first of two brawlers making her way into the next Brawl Stars update, and today I'm going to line her up 1v1 versus every brawler in Brawl Stars to find out how potent this thrower is. JuJu is the owner of the Oddity Shop in Brawl Stars and the first of a new trio. She's a mythic artillery brawler, and as such, she's going to be a bit tougher one to unlock, but you will have the option of switching to her when she releases or picking her up through an in-app purchase. And if you do decide to purchase her early or get the Brawl Pass, I would greatly appreciate your support in using code LEX in the shop or at the Supercell store, which is usually a better deal. JuJu has 3 attacks: Earth, Grass, and Water, and what attack you unleash depends on where you're standing. If you're on normal ground, you're going to use her ground attack. This one deals more damage than her other two, but still deals only a modest 2,000 damage. When you're standing in a bush, you will get her grass form attack. With this buff, your shot range will increase, and not just by a little either. The extended range is by a massive amount. Now, on the downside, her grass attack only deals 1,600 damage, which is pretty underwhelming. Then finally, JuJu can hover above the water, and while doing that, you get a water type attack. This attack will slow enemies for a brief moment, which is very useful, especially with your teammates, in help getting that kill, because once again, she only deals 1,600 damage with this buff. Now, you can actually harness the power of all 3 shots at once by using her first gadget called Voodoo Child, which is the name of a Jimi Hendrix song from the 1960s. Fun fact for you. But when activated, the next shot will apply all of the benefits of every type of her attacks into one attack, which is pretty cool. However, even better is her second gadget called Elementalist. This will give her a temporary buff based on what type she is at the moment. So if she has the Earth buff, she's going to get a damage reduction shield. For Grass, she will actually become invisible for a few seconds, and then over Water, she's going to get a movement speed increase. Both gadgets are actually pretty cool, but I think the second one's more interesting at least. Now for her super, JuJu has a pet that she will put out. This puppet will attack enemies from range by shooting needles at them, and while it's not super threatening, the damage is enough that it will have to be dealt with quickly. However, that's going to be a bit harder with her star power called Guarded Gris, which Gris, that's the puppet's name. With this star power, Gris will spawn with a shield, making it even tougher to bring down, but if you want to make it even more deadly, then equip her other star power called Numbing Needles. With this star power, attacks from Gris will also slow enemies for 1 second when it attacks them, and this is actually a really good star power and the one that I would suggest that you use. However, for these tests, since we're not using supers, it's just base level interactions, her star power doesn't affect anything. So let's find out how she does in those base level interactions against every other brawler in Brawl Stars, starting with her fellow throwers. Now Barley has less health, but he has extra poison ticks, and both brawlers go down at about the same time. Dynamite simply has much more power than JuJu, but yet still barely beats her. JuJu's shot may move slow, but not as slow as Tick, as he loses once again. And while Grom is a close one, JuJu just narrowly wins, and it's almost the same exact result with Larry and Lori, while Sprout beats JuJu by just a few frames. Now between these throwers, the tests were actually really close. That at least shows us that health-wise and damage-wise, she at least hangs with the other throwers. But where are the weaknesses and strengths against them? Well, first off, let's look at her strength, and that's her grass shot. The range on it is incredibly far. She's going to outrange the other throwers, but again, only if she's standing in a bush. So it's an advantage, but it's a situational one. And yes, she can also walk on water, which could give her a unique edge. But again, how many times is this actually going to help? Now, where she falls short here is with her damage. While her ground shot is equal to some of these brawlers, her grass and her water shot is only as good as basically 1 tick of Barley's poison, which isn't that strong for a full shot. However, she does break out a nice tool with her pet doll, as it adds a way for her to put pressure on them from multiple different angles. All in all, she matches up pretty evenly with most of the throwers, with some weaknesses and some strengths. But how is that going to translate against a stronger opponent like the tanks? Now let's just get the ugly part out of the way right off the top here. JuJu is a thrower, and no thrower is going to stand at point-blank range against these tanks. And that fact is not changing today, as her damage is almost meaningless against these bruisers. I mean, she did just get 2-shot by Daryl, and then one after another, the tanks came in and just hammered her into the ground. Like literally. Seriously, no mercy given whatsoever. But Hank and Buster, they don't drag it out at all and put her away. She can't get Meg out of her mech form as she gets whittled down, and Draco, well, he just two-shots her as well. So that was about as bad as it could get for JuJu. Really though, no thrower can perform well in these base interaction tests against the tank. However, these tests only tell part of the story, so now let's fill in the rest. In a game, it's not going to be super often that a tank is right on top of you as a thrower. I mean, sure, Bull can charge you or Daryl can roll up to you, but for the most part, they're not really going to reach you, and if they have, well then something has went terribly wrong. And if there's water around you, then you have an easy means of escape, as no other tank can walk on water, as well as you can shoot them with your water shot to slow them down. But if a tank does get to you, then yeah, you're in serious trouble. You don't have enough damage to take them out easily, and you really don't have a great way to defend yourself either. So yeah, just don't let that happen if you can help it. Stay back behind your wall doing thrower things. But what if you can't keep the distance between you and your attacker? Well, that's what would happen against our next group, the Assassins. In an actual game, this is probably her worst nightmare. In fact, this is every thrower's worst nightmare. Now, she does make a dent in some of these Brawlers' hit points, but not Mortis, because he really just kind of dashes out of the way. However, she does take Buzz down to 3,600, which isn't too bad. With how slow her shot is, it's hard to time them against Miko, but she was one shot away from finishing off Melody. Lily shanks her, and even the low hit point Crow comes out with a win. And of course, Kenji just slashes and dashes his way to victory, but what about in a game? Will it really be this bad? Yes. Yes, it's really going to be this bad. I mean, listen, every assassin, when they spawn in, they want to see a thrower on the other side. Now, some throwers have some strong defensive mechanisms, like they can knock back the Brawlers, they can stun them, they can slow them down, but JuJu, she really doesn't have any of that. The only situation where she would have that is if there was some water nearby that she could escape on. Otherwise, she's just a sitting duck and free real estate for every assassin to pick on. It's a bad matchup, and the worst it's going to get from JuJu in this video, so she's just going to take the L and move on to a more reasonable matchup with the controllers. Now, we have a wide variety of Brawlers with the controller class, from Brawlers like Jesse and Penny, who shoot single shots, to Bo and Ems, who can hit you 3 times with a single shot. And then there's Griff and Gale, who have multiple projectiles. The thing that they all have in common is that, yeah, they got enough to beat JuJu in base level interaction. In fact, most of these Brawlers, they're not really known for like high amounts of damage, but to be fair, most throwers aren't either. Except for Dynamite, he's kind of cracked. Now, JuJu does have enough damage to take out Willow as her damage just slowly ramps up, but Chuck, he just ran her over. Now, it was much closer with Charlie, and then with Sandy, it was very close, and Sandy actually threw his last shot after JuJu threw hers, but his shot traveled much faster. And then finally, Amber just burns JuJu right down to the ground in a close fight. Now, while JuJu lost all of these matches, except for Willow, they were close. Now, in a game, I think that this is actually a pretty decent matchup for JuJu. These Brawlers, for the most part, don't have a gap closer like the Assassins did. Both Penny and Jesse have bad matchups because they don't really have a safe place to put their turrets. And damage-wise, they don't have much of an advantage either. So, while JuJu didn't look great in these interactions, I think that she's going to do just fine in a game against most of these Brawlers. She has the thrower advantage, and she's going to need that edge for our next group against the Marksmen. Now, Marksmen usually don't have a bunch of health, and JuJu has pretty decent amount for a thrower, but her shots move really slow. And because of this, she loses to Brock, and then Piper takes her out right before she goes down, and then it's even closer with B. Now, Nani obliterates her, and Belle's star power saves her from losing, but JuJu flips the script and gets a win against Mandy. Maisie gets her shots out really fast and wins, but Angelo can't say the same, and while Janet gets a win, it's not real convincing. Now, this may have been a close matchup across the board here, but in a game, JuJu has some clear advantages with her super. Marksmen, for the most part, fire single shots with lots of damage, and they don't do well against multiple targets. And JuJu's pet can really help her out here. Using her super to put extra pressure is really going to cramp the Marksman's style. They're going to have to deal with both of these coming at them, and while for the most part, snipers don't usually face off against throwers just due to where they are on the map, If they do, JuJu can do all right here. Combine that with a bush, and JuJu actually has the range with her grass attack to match up against these marksmen and put pressure on them where they normally wouldn't have to worry about a thrower. So while it was close in these interactions, I'd give the edge to JuJu on this one. Now, we just saw JuJu hold her own in the last matchup, but now she has to face off against the damage dealers. These brawlers have the power to stop almost any brawler in the game, and I mean, yeah, we knew she wasn't going to beat Shelly, but Nita actually made it close. Colt, however, has just too much damage, and so does 8-Bit. Rico has no walls to use and falls just short, and Carl's shots take too long to keep up the damage. Now, we don't use supers in these tests, so Colette really can't win, but Lola doesn't need a super to burst JuJu down. And it's not even close when Pearl and Tara unleash their damage on her, but Eve doesn't have the same power and dies just before JuJu does. RT, though, has zero issues, and Clancy, even at stage 1, wins, but not by much. And finally, Chester, cycled to his 3rd and 4th shots, just disappears JuJu off the map almost instantly. So in a game, this is really going to come down to the map and the matchup. Now, some of these brawlers, she's going to be able to handle without too much issue. If they can't get to her behind a wall, she's going to be just fine, but other brawlers like Mo or Surge, they're going to terrorize her, and she does not have a great way to defend herself. Brawlers like Colette, who don't deal with spawners and pets well, are going to have a bit more trouble, however, as JuJu matches up against her pretty decently. All in all, in a real game, this is actually pretty heavily skewed to the damage dealer's favor, but only if they have a wall break or a means of getting to her. She is a thrower, and throwers have the advantage of a wall as protection, so be sure to use that to your advantage. And if you do, it won't be as bad as that look. Now, our last group of brawlers here are the support brawlers. These brawlers specialize in helping their team mainly by healing, but JuJu helps her team in a different way. Now, she doesn't have a ton of damage, as we can see from these interactions, but neither do most of these support brawlers. Well, except for Pam, which she can pretty much beat any brawler if they're this close. Now, JuJu does get some wins against brawlers like Barry, but she won't hold as much control as he does, nor can she heal. She can, however, beat Byron, but so can every other brawler in these interactions. Now, she has some close matches with Gray and Kit, and some not so close ones with brawlers like Doug. So then, you have seen JuJu 1v1 versus every brawler in Brawl Stars. Is she going to be any good? Well, it's complicated. There are a lot of really good things going on with this brawler. She has 3 different types of attacks that are all pretty useful, and if the terrain allows, the extra range from the grass and the slowing from the water are really good. Now, her pet isn't super threatening because it walks so slow and it fires slow as well, but it does attack from range and has pretty decent damage. And you have a couple of star powers to help shape that pet how you want, although I would suggest the slowing one because I think it's better. However, there are some serious downsides as well. She has almost no way to defend herself. If someone gets close to you, there's really not much you can do, so you're going to have to be a little safe with her. Now, her main ground shot deals alright damage, but it's certainly not strong. Her grass and water shot, however, is pretty darn weak, but it is countered by extra effects that help them out, especially her water shot, which is probably her most valuable attack. Her shots travel really slow as well, so it's going to be easier to avoid those shots, and aside from her grass shot, her range is just alright. It's not horrible, but it's not great. The problem I see here is that if you're going into a map where you need a thrower, is this the thrower that you're really going to choose? I mean, she is versatile for sure, but everything that she can do can kind of be done better by another thrower, but at the same time, she can do more than most throwers. She's a jack of all trades, but a master of none. That being said, I love her character. I dig the style and the complexity of the mechanics. I just think that she could probably use a little buff to her damage. But a brawler that does do plenty of damage is Shade, so come back tomorrow for that.